Welcome to the PPP webinar today for Realtime Lab, and I will pass over to Phil and spotlight Phil. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to give you a brief overview of this PPP project. I'll explain exactly what that is in just a second. But the overview of this is real-time performance and environments capture digital humans and scene intelligence call. I'm a senior lecturer and co-investigator on CoSTAR. I also am the head of partnerships at the Realtime Lab here in Dundee, and I'll talk a little bit more about the structure of the project as we go through these slides before I pass over to the National Lab. But we'll have a section at the end of the first part of this where we could talk about the technical aspects of the call. So this Prototypes and Pilots Programme, or PPP, funding call explores the future of digital production, the convergence of real-time performance capture, volumetric environments, and scene intelligence into unified end-to-end creative production pipelines. We are part of a national infrastructure. CoSTAR is run through the National Lab down in London, with soon to have a facility at Pinewood Studios. And there's other labs in Wakefield, which is the Live Lab. There's one in Belfast, which is the Screen Lab, and the Foresight Lab, which is also in London as well. But we're based in Dundee, down at Water's Edge, and we have a facility there, but we also have a facility in Abertay, which I'll talk about later on in the presentation. This little video will explain a little bit more about the background of CoSTAR Realtime Lab.
CoSTAR Realtime Lab brings together world-leading R&D expertise from Abertay University in Games Design and Development and Edinburgh University in the use of AI. We'll work together with UK games, film and animation industries to drive innovation in the integration of real-time technologies and artificial intelligence into next-generation production. We're currently working with multinational technology vendors. Working with the other network labs, the Realtime Lab will help to build a national network of innovators, producers and creatives that will help to make the UK a global destination for next-generation production.
CoSTAR Realtime Lab is an incredibly exciting project to be involved in. The idea that the confluence of the latest technology in video games, the latest technology in the film and television industry coming together right here in Dundee, and us being able to work in collaboration with Abertay on some incredibly exciting new technologies for use in that, I couldn't be more excited, to be honest.
The facilities and the expertise will drive R&D-led innovation into our commercialisation pipeline, which will be managed by Interface, who operate Scotland's University Innovation Scheme, and Codebase, who operate TechScaler, a technology accelerator on behalf of the Scottish Government.
I've been in and around the games industry for the past 25 years, and watching games technology progress to where it's now being used as an integral part of major feature film production has been mind-blowing. So to actually see that come on site here with CoSTAR Realtime Lab is incredible, and it's only the beginning. You know, I think the next decade of work, which is why this research project is perfectly positioned, it's going to become even more important for producing some of the world's greatest content.
So that's a brief overview of the project and the space, but I want to get a little bit more specific about the facilities that we have at Water's Edge and also in Abertay itself. So down at Water's Edge, we have a virtual production studio, which is suitable for medium-sized productions, TV, music videos, advertising, shoots and more. It's a 15 by 3 meter IOTO LED screen volume, and it's a 1.5 pixel pitch. There's a movable light panel and 3 by 3 meter LED roof, providing full 360-degree lighting for virtual production. We also have a motion capture system. It's a Vicon Vero system. That's in Abertay. And we have a 6 by 6 meter volume for the performance capture in that space. And we've also recently installed in that same space a green screen studio as well as a backup to our virtual production set, which is down at Water's Edge. That's a brief overview of the facility. Some of you might be aware of it, but again, if you're successful, we will give you a tour of these spaces. So The project itself, CoSTAR is looking to bridge the gap between fragmented production processes, motion capture, volumetric, and facial capture by creating unified real-time pipelines. And we want to move away from manual isolated workflows towards systems where digital assets are captured once, understood automatically, and reused. There's two focus areas to this project, but we anticipate this crossover between these two focus areas. So these are kind of just a general overview of these different areas that we're wanting to look at the research and development work. We're looking for full body motion capture and facial expression tracking. We're looking for voice, audio performance, and volumetric capture technology, and we're looking at real-time Gaussian splatting for high fidelity representations. The potential R&D, it's not exclusive to these areas, but obviously they do include working with compatible systems such as Vicon, OptiTrack, Rococo, XS, and more. Adaptive retargeting, realistic, stylized, and volumetric avatar support with high accuracy rig and blend shape mapping. And we're looking at low latency live performance, real-time virtual production stages, and streamable volumetric and splat characters for broadcast and VTubing. And the other focus area is volumetric environments and scene intelligence. We're looking to capture environments and in real time move them across different mediums. This can integrate volumetric capture, scene intelligence, machine learning adaptation, and modular environment design. And again, the potential R&D areas, but again, not exclusive to, is volumetric and motion capture reconstruction, large-scale high-fidelity environment acquisition with efficient reconstruction for real-time playback, scene intelligence and machine learning automation, semantic understanding of volumetric 3D environments, including automatic relighting, scaling, and spatial alignment. And finally, modular reusable environment design, which is a library of volumetric components and metadata-rich assets for fast search and dynamic building and recomposition. So the main areas of interest in the real-time lab are as follows: real-time game engine work, motion capture, virtual production, 3D environments, photogrammetry, and the crossover of these different technologies. But we're also interested in how these different technologies interface with games, film, television, animation, and immersive areas as well. So we're pretty open, I would say, in the call. It may sound very specific what we're looking for, but we're looking for innovation here. Essentially, we're looking to innovate across this area using these technologies as a Kickstarter to get these different innovative processes and pipelines underway. So we'll go into much more detail on this in the second part of the presentation, but we're looking for at least 2 projects here for the funding. That's up to 50k, 25 to 50k per project. There might be 4 different projects if we split the grant down, but there's a total of £100,000 available in this call, and that equates to 20 days in the real-time studio. But again, that is offset, and we'll talk about this in the second part of the presentation, to how much money you get. So we'll talk about that in section 2, and access to our facilities and expertise around the hub down at Water's Edge and in Abertay as well. So that's a general overview of the project, what we're looking for. I'm going to jump out of this section and bring Matt Bett in to the conversation as well, who's our head of virtual production down at Water's Edge as well. And if anyone has any specific project-based questions, then we'll take them just now, and then we'll hand over to the National Lab to talk about more of the terms and conditions of the call, and then we can pick up any other questions at the end of that section as well. So I'm going to come out of my screen share here and come into the general conversation just for a quick Q&A. Okay, I'm going to just go down the Q&A down the side here, Matt. Hopefully you can see these as well, but I'll just go take them in order that they came in. So the R&D themes seem mostly focused on vision. Is there any interest in audio-centric projects in the framework of the global automated production interest? I mean, I would say we are probably more looking at the visual as our area of expertise, but that's not to say we would exclude any audio projects. We do have an audio setup down at Water's Edge and in Abertay as well. I think something that crosses over into performance obviously has an audio aspect, whether that is lip sync or whether that is a dance piece, for example, that uses sound. But I would say we are maybe a little bit more leaning towards visually literate projects. Matt, I don't know if you want to come in on that as well.
Yeah, 100%. We would never exclude a novel, interesting, or valuable project on the strength of that. If there's something truly awesome, then it'll get considered for it. But as Phil said, we are mainly focused on the visual side of things, and the equipment and facilities we have tends to lean in that direction. There are some rudimentary audio apparatus in both the facilities, but yeah, it's not was not our main focus in building the facilities, but 100% we would look at it and consider it.
I mean, some of the other calls have been more focused on audio across the network, so again, it might be worthwhile looking at those other labs when the other calls come up. But like I said, we're not excluding anything at the moment when it comes to the ideas. So I'll go on to the next question. How much time do we get with the experts to support the prototype development of our project? This is built into the call. So you do get the time in the space again, which is offset against how much money you get. But also there is access to some technical support there. It's obviously not full time, but but there is that access to our expertise as well, and we certainly would get everything up and running and problem solve for you, as you go. But I expect most people who come in will have a kind of technology background as well. It's been our experience that most people come in and they're quite used to working in an environment like this, but we do have support whether you need it. How do we include the cost of the use of the lab into our project costs in the application? This will come up in the second part of the presentation. I think that's better that we answer that in the National Lab section here. So does anyone else have any more technically led questions, or are we good to move on to the National Lab to talk a little bit more about the terms and conditions? So there's one more here, I think. Markets of interest. Are you focused on industry outcomes, or would prosumer mass market products qualify as well, assuming a significant and defensible market size? Again, market-wise, we're not limiting to one specific area. I think we want to keep it open at this stage. Obviously, it's industry-facing. It's an industry-led project. So we're looking for industry kind of savvy and kind of production pipelines which are real and actually work with the industry as well. Matt, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that as well.
No, 100%. We want this to have some kind of applicability. It's not just a personal project or a vanity thing. It has to be something that's going to be making an impact, or starting up a company that specializes in that, or something like that. There has to be some kind of industry motivated reasoning behind the project that is either going to go into something bigger, or it's going to service one of the aspects of the industry.
Okay, I think we've got one more question in the Q&A, but I think that's best answered in the next part of the presentation. So I think I will pass over now to the National Lab, who will go through the information you need for the application, the very specific information, which I think is really useful. So thanks for your time, and I'll pass over to Kylie and Will at the National Lab. Thanks, everyone.
Hi everyone. I'm Kylie. I'm the senior producer at the National Lab. Can everyone see my screen? Yes, fantastic. I'm just going to take you through real practicalities about applying, and then I'll hand over to Will, and he'll talk a little bit more about some of the details of completing your budget and some other requirements that we have. So I'll go through that. So just very quickly. Um, one of the things we do ask is for you to use our platform Submittable to complete your application. So when you the information that we're providing here, both myself and Will, it's all in your applicant guidance pack, which is on the website and is downloadable in a PDF format, very similar to what we're presenting here. So there's more detail on some of these things. But you do need to use Submittable. We do provide a PDF of the application questions so that you've got the questions in advance. You can know what you need to fill in. When you're ready to complete them, go into Submittable. You have to sign up and then put all your details into Submittable there. The other thing about using Submittable is just to let you know, you can, multiple people can access the application form at once. So if you want to allocate a question to one of your colleagues, please answer this one, I'll answer the other one. You can work in the application together. And the final thing is we do ask that there's only 2 additional documents provided. So we don't need decks and presentations and lots of other additional information. Please try to keep your responses within the questions that we ask you. The 2 additional documents that we do ask you to upload are a high-level budget and a very sort of basic project plan. We provide you with templates for those, so download the budget, download the schedule or project plan, and then re-upload them to those questions. So if you have any problems with those downloads or anything, you can always contact us. So the other thing is, are we able to provide some support for your applications? If you, this might be the case if you're neurodiverse or you have eyesight or other issues and you find the application process tricky, please do have a look at our access support bursaries. Those bursaries are twofold. One is for applying, so you can get help in completing your application. The second is for if you are successful and you only need to apply for that one. Should you be selected, you can let us know that you might need to have support to access the lab, be it, additional support due to reasons that it's difficult for you to actually go into the lab. So we're happy to provide that support, and that's via our Access Bursaries program. And just a quick look on the hot topic of the last few years is, can you use AI? And we generally follow the UKRI's policy on the use of AI in your application. Your application is not marked down on whether you use AI or not. But we just look at the quality of the idea, the quality of the concept. I think that people are getting very familiar with, if it's just really been pumped out by AI. So I suggest that you really do look at your final application, and it really does follow what you want to say, but we understand that people use it for editing and that sort of purpose. Also, after Will's gone through this and we've finished the webinar, if you have any further questions, please contact us at costar.pilots.at rhul.ac.uk. We ask that all questions go through there. We will, if they're very specific and they need to be answered by the Real-Time Lab team that are here, we'll make sure that they answer them directly, but put your questions through that general email address. And it is very difficult for the Real-Time Lab, is this idea a good one? It's not something that we can really respond to. We don't want to pre-assess or give advice to one company that we don't give to another company, so we try to be fair in that respect. So that's just all about questions. And that's really all for me. I'll stop sharing and I'll hand over to Will. He'll get into the nitty-gritty of some of responding to some specific questions.
Thanks, Kylie. Good morning, everyone. My name's Will Saunders. I'm the creative head of the CoSTAR National Lab. I also jointly run this piloting and prototyping program. I just want to give you a tiny bit of background, and it was in one of the questions I think that was posed. CoSTAR is an infrastructure grant, and it's the largest investment to date in creative industries research and development. We exist to help grow the UK's creative economy and to help grow the companies that are going to do that. So it's important to us that when companies come and apply, they own and retain the IP that is developed through working with us. So I think that was one of the questions. The other thing that I want to reiterate is this is an infrastructure grant. This is not like applying to other R&D funders, potentially like Innovate, right? So CoSTAR exists to develop the sort of infrastructure and these labs and the state-of-the-art technologies and the researchers in order to help grow companies. And we think the formula that may achieve that is access to this infrastructure. And by that, we mean the facilities of the lab, other hardware and software that can be made available, and the research expertise. So the money that we make available is there to test the value of the infrastructure we have created. It's very important to us that we see in your application the desire to use the infrastructure that has been made available. All right. So what I'm going to run through now is just a bunch of information that everything I'm going to share with you is available in the application pack. So please do download and read all of the documentation before you start to apply. But I'm going to try and guide you through some of the peculiarities of applying for grant funding from us. And again, just to reiterate, we're here to help you. Everything we're going to do today is to try and encourage you to apply. Please also be mindful that this is an application process, right? At point of shortlist and point of award, we'd have another conversation with you where we take you one-to-one again through this process to make sure we're accurately capturing in your application all of the costs, all of the understanding you will need to have on subsidy control. But at the moment, we just need to make this application process as transparent as we can. So let's make a start on that. I'm hoping you can see my slides. Good.
Yep,
Okay, so
good.
hold on one second. I'm not seeing them move. Sorry. Hold on. Let's try it again.
I can share for you if it's quicker, Will.
Yeah, do you want to do that? I'll stop sharing. Okay.
And we've just lost you on the screen, Will.
Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Okay, let's race through these. Eligibility. Do you want to bring that one up, please, Kylie? CoSTAR is to help grow creative companies. If you're a freelancer, you do need to be a UK registered company. You can be a part if you're a sole trader of somebody's application, but we do need a UK company leading an application. When it comes to companies, we fully expect freelancers and subcontractors to be a big part of grant applications. And we've allocated that 70% of your total budget can be dedicated to subcontractors. There's guidance in the budget guidance that shares more information on that. A research organisation can be included as part of an application, but I come back to the fact lead applicants must be UK registered companies. Next slide, please. Would current projects that's already running be considered for funding? A current project would really have to define and articulate a really good R&D case study within it to be eligible. This isn't product completion funding. Please don't treat it as that. Look for the R&D question within everything that you're kind of applying to us for. You don't need to have been a registered UK company for a specific period of time. We do and are used to companies being formed in order to apply. So please don't worry about the status of you as a company. Can companies of any size apply for calls? Yes, you can. And we determine size based on a categorization that is also in the budget guidance information in the application pack. I won't go into it there. You can see the classification. We think the majority of UK companies that apply to us are generally micro or small companies. Next. Okay, subsidy control. Subsidy control is an important part of what we do now because due to Brexit, UK legislation has changed when it comes to public subsidy, and we now have to work within a subsidy control regime that came into effect earlier this year. It doesn't impact you significantly in terms of your application. It just means we've had to change the way in which we ask companies to declare. And one of the things you do have to declare is any level of public subsidy or public grant you may have received previously. I think the level at which it will impact you is somewhere in the region if you've received, I think it's £3 million, which most companies never actually get to, will never have received, right? But if you receive something in excess of 100,000, we need to register you on a UKRI register. Anyway, we do that. Next slide. You will know this if you apply for any other forms of kind of innovate or R&D funding. We need you in your application to show that your application is R&D. So in order to do that, you must meet all of the 5 research and development criteria, and you must have your project classified as innovative. I won't read these out, but these are the R&D criteria we need you to adhere to. And next slide. This is what we mean by innovative, and these are standard terms used across UKRI. Next slide, please. Is my research industrial research or experimental development? Again, you're used to probably seeing these on other forms of UKRI application. The reason that this is important is that how your research is classified will affect the level of grant we can award. Industrial research is the majority of projects that have come through us are industrial research. And if you bring up the next slide, I'll explain. I think you'll see the levels at which we determine what industrial research and experimental development are. The very fact that you are going to come in to a simulated environment and a lab-like environment would indicate that the majority of projects that go through us are going to be industrial research. But we need to ask the question, and you need to tick the box on the application form as to which you think it is. Next slide, please. How's the value of your grant calculated, and what percentage of eligible costs are you able to claim back? Right. So this is why the subsidy control is important, because grant awards are calculated on a subsidy ratio, and the final subsidy amount is calculated by applying the correct ratio and comparing it to eligible costs. And as you're seeing here, what your company is classified as does affect the level of grant we can award. Another factor in all of this is we can uplift grant awards by 15% if they're determined to involve effective collaboration. And again, if you bring up the next slide, effective collaboration will be determined by each lab that is assessing the call. In this case, this would be Realtime Lab. When they see the applications come in, they will determine and talk to you at point of shortlisting an award as to whether or not you qualify for effective collaboration. The The criteria that help determine it are there. They're in the application pack. And again, we anticipate the majority of applications will be effective collaboration, because there are a number of different criteria, but one of them would be, for example, the ability for us to be able to publish research results and things like that. Again, you'll read the criteria in the application pack, and at point of award, this conversation will be had. But that additional 15% for effective collaboration is there as an uplift that could take small companies from 70 to 85% of eligible costs being recovered. Next slide. Again, you should be used to this if you have previously applied for R&D grants. Company contributions are ways in which we can share that the public investment is a good investment in terms of companies come to us for grant, but we also see additional leverage and contribution in terms of in-kind labour, materials, use of internal equipment, hired equipment facilities. And again, at point of award, we can talk you through some of this. At application, you need to try and show how you're thinking about a company contribution that can be put forward. Next slide. All right. I'm going to get somebody else to play a video now that gives you a bit more guidance as to how you can go about completing the budget template that will give you at point of application a reasonable understanding of what sort of cash awards you might receive. So Kylie, if you're going to play the video, that'd be great.
In this video, I'm going to walk you through how to complete the PPP budget template. This is the format we'll ask all companies to use when applying, so that your project is compliant with subsidy control regulations. This budget template is used to calculate your total eligible project costs, the maximum funding, cash grant you could receive, your minimum required company contribution, and the value of subsidy that we must record for transparency and compliance purposes. It is essential that the template is completed accurately, truthfully, and in full, as the information is used to determine funding eligibility, subsidy level, and reporting obligations under UK subsidy rules. I'll go step by step, showing you exactly how to fill this in as we go. First, we'll stop at the top left of the template where you'll enter your project costs. All costs must sit within the correct categories. You'll see the following sections: labour, materials, capital usage or equipment hire, subcontractors, travel and subsistence, any other costs, and overheads. You should input your costs under each of these headings, adding your unit cost, quantity, and then the total is calculated automatically by the template. I'll show you an example of one that's been populated here. For labour costs, you should only include staff working directly on the project. Enter their day rate and the number of days that they'll spend on the project to calculate the total. Next up, materials. These must be directly used for developing your project. For example, prototyping materials or software licenses could be claimed for here. Capital usage. For equipment, you should only include usage or hire costs. You should not include the full purchase price of any equipment. Please make sure that you're only including equipment or venue requirements that are not included in the selected lab provision. I've included an example of how to work out capital usage in this comment here for reference. Subcontractors. If you are using subcontractors on your project, please include them here. These should be specialist services that you can't deliver internally, and they must be UK based. Your total subcontractor value should not exceed more than 75% of your total project value. Travel and subsistence. This should only include essential project-related travel, and please abide by the regulations for reasonable costs that are provided as part of your applicant guidance. For any other costs, you can fill out under the other cost section on the normal template. And for overheads, you will see that these are already calculated automatically at 20% of the labour costs you've populated above, so you don't need to fill this out. Once you've entered your project company costs, the next step is to scroll down to the lab selection. Here you'll select which CoSTAR lab you plan to work with, and then enter the number of days that you expect to use the lab. So I'll enter live lab here, and say I'll be using it for 5 days. That will calculate your total. Next up, you need to complete your project declarations. So you'll need to select your project classification, whether it is industrial or experimental, your company size, for example, micro or small, medium or large, and whether your project meets the definition of effective collaboration. You can find more information about all of the definitions for these in your applicant guidance pack. This is really important because it determines how much funding your project can receive. Once you've filled in those fields, the template will do the rest for you. It will automatically calculate your total project costs, including lab costs, the maximum intervention rate based on your answers, and the maximum cash grant available for you to request as part of this call. So you'll see here, based on the answers I've provided, the maximum intervention rate is 85% of the total project costs. Therefore, the maximum cash grant available to me is just under £41,000. Therefore, your minimum required company contribution would be 15% of the total project costs, which comes to just under £9,000. This is a required commitment from the company towards the project activity and can be provided as cash, staff time on the project, materials, or use of internal equipment. This is why it's so important that all the sections above are completed accurately, as the funding calculations depend directly on the information you provide. Before submitting, just make sure that all of your costs are in the correct categories, you've selected the correct lab and number of days, and that your project classification and company details are accurate. And that's it. Once completed, this template gives us a fully compliant breakdown of your project costs and funding request. We know that this can feel detailed, so our team will be able to support you through the process if needed, and all definitions and guidance are included in your applicant pack. Thanks so much, and we look forward to seeing your applications.
Thanks, Kylie. Just to reiterate, for those of you that are new to this, that budget template, I suggest strongly you just play around with it until you work out the way in which you think you can configure your project best. And again, I just want to reiterate that this is for an application. At point of shortlist or award, we would take you through this again, and we would work with you again on this just to make sure, right? And I think those are the majority of questions answered that I've seen when it comes to this kind of how do we apply stuff. But if anyone has any more, we'll be very happy to ask. And I reiterate, please download the application pack. All of the information on how to complete your application is in there. Please read that. If anything doesn't make sense, reach out to us on email and we do everything we can to help you. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you. Well, so just to reiterate on some of those questions that you've given answers for. So who owns the IP of anything generated through this fund? You picked up on that one before. The whole point of this is that that then remains with the company. How do we include the cost of the use of the lab into our project cost in the application? The video showed that there's a drop down option in there for selecting the lab you're working with, and it'll put a cost in there. One of the other questions that came in was if we have travel costs to get to the lab for the project, can we include these in the overall project costs? Again, so that's within the full project cost that somebody puts them in. And I think that's everything that's in for you. So I will bring back Phil and Matt onto the screen for some questions going on there. So Phil, Matt, one of the questions that came in asks if it's a project creation of virtual worlds using generative AI to be used in a film OTT content, what is the chance of funding?
Well, we're not really discriminating against the use of Gen AI in the sort of in the making of the work. However, I would say the rider to that is that we really look at something that's 100% generated with AI. If it's part of the process, that's absolutely fine, and obviously it's part of the pipelines as well that we use and utilize. But really, the projects which stand a better chance are ones that maybe go beyond that, I would say. Matt, I think we have fairly similar views on this.
Yeah, of course, yeah, you can't, your final product can't be pulled out of a magic box in that kind of generative AI sense. But if you're using generative AI to address a shortfall in your ability to produce content for your project, that's totally fine. Generative AI pipelines are a fact, and any appropriate use of AI, it will be, won't be looked upon negatively for any application that we're looking at.
Great. And next question that came in: how many hours of recording is possible using the infrastructure in camera VFX, IC VFX, extended reality? Will the content production studio need to get their own technical team with the know-how of how to use the equipment?
I'm going to default to our kind of guidelines of up to 20 days is the kind of parameter, and it will be by negotiation. What's the point of if you've been awarded one of the grants here, then we'll negotiate with you on that time and where the gaps in expertise lies. I expect whoever comes in has got a technology background, so I'd expect you'll be coming in with your own people and technical ability, but like I said, if there is some gaps in the knowledge, then we're obviously here to make sure that everything runs as smoothly as possible. And I'll pass over to Matt for that as well.
Yeah, it's a good question, but the answer is a little bit like how long is a piece of string? It depends what you're doing. If you have people that are starting off from a good baseline of technical knowledge, if you have people coming onto it that are doing Unreal Engine, we can get you up to speed fairly quickly. Once you get a project set up, can be operated entirely by you. If you're doing something more novel and more technologically challenging, then that changes that picture, and more people might need to get involved. It comes down more to how well you plan and execute your shooting more than anything else. We've had shoots that have went swimmingly, and we've gotten huge amounts of footage per day, and we've had ones that there's been a problem and planning's not been there, and you've gotten very little work done. So yeah, it just depends how technically challenging is what you're doing going to be, and that's how good you're planning and how you're actually organizing your shoot on the day. We'll always recommend having a little recce beforehand, and solving all the problems that are going to crop up before they become problems when you've actually got actors or dancers or whatever you're doing actually on the stage. So yeah, we'll
definitely come back to that depending on who gets the funding, and we'll sit down with whoever that is, and we'll work out a plan to take that forward.
Okay, thank you. I think looking through the Q&A section, I think we've covered all the questions in there. If there's any last minute questions that people want to submit, please do. Otherwise, here's the one that's just come in. A super specific question. Actually, they've got a couple. So first of all, super specific question. What are the dimensions of the real-time lab? I can see from the tech specs there is a 15 meter by 3 meter LED volume, but I'm interested in the floor space and elevation of the studio itself. Is that information, if that information exists for us as applicants, is there a floor plan?
I can tell you very quickly what the rough dimensions of the space are. So the workable height of the volume is about 3.5 meters, or just 3 meters. There's a screen that is a ceiling screen that's suspended over the space, so you can't have anything that interacts with that. We can move it out the way, so you've got up to 4 meters where the ceiling straps are, and we can't go any higher than that because that's part of the building structure. The shortest dimension of the studio space is the 11.5 meters, which is the sort of the main length of the wall, and then the longest part of the studio is 23 meters, and so that really extends far back beyond what you see in the pictures, and it's a sort of a large working space where we put all the virtual production operation team back there out of the way. So it's a pretty large space. So you've got I would say workably about 8 meters with the screen's dimensions to the wall in terms of the width, and then obviously quite a long distance back from the wall to the end of the studio. That really just allows you to do, if you want to do some work with a really long lens, that's what enables you to get the camera back far enough to actually shoot on the volume with that focal length. We'll give you, I'm sure, some diagrams we can supply to people seeking more information, but that's the rough dimensions for you there.
There is a backup to that. There is a section on the CoSTAR Realtime Lab website which has the spec there as well. But like I say, but Matt has got even deeper knowledge of that if you need it.
Just for anyone else listening as well that's interested in the mocap side, our motion capture studio is an 8 by 10 meter room with a 6 by 6 meter motion capture tracking volume. So if anything can be done in that 6 by 6 meter square, we can capture it, and that's the limitations we have with the motion capture setup. And we could do two performers at once, maybe 3 at a push, but that's the basic operating limitations of the motion capture.
And we've also recently installed a green screen in that same space, so the floor space can double for that, and it's really good for reference or pre-virtual production tests as well, which we can run the same kind of camera tracking that we do down at Water's Edge. We can do in Aberdeen now in a green screen studio, which is in the same space as the Vicon mocap system.
Great.
There's another question here I've noticed. I could probably jump in on that. Based on a previous project that we did. The data generated is fine to use beyond the project. We've had instances of that. Obviously, motion capture, for example, the data that is generated there obviously does have an external use. Which is quite a good example of how that would play out. So yeah, that is okay within the remit of the project.
Just for the benefit of the recording, because some of they won't come up with the questions in that. So the question was, if the R&D conducted is a legitimate problem within an existing commercial project, is it possible to use data generated at the labs for the project?
Can I just build on that as well and go, we talked previously about this isn't completion funding. So I would only ask, Dave, when you frame this application, think long and hard about the sector-wide benefits of the R&D that you are proposing. Yes, we understand it's tied to an existing commercial project, but we must understand the value of the R&D in other contexts, not just the very specific commercial project you are facing. Hope that's helpful.
Perfect. So I think that's all our Q&A. And if that is everything in, then we will draw the webinar to a close. Kylie, have you got any last things you want to say?
Did we cover the question about hours of recording? I'm sorry if I missed that.
Yep.
We did. Yep. Great. Thank you. No further questions from me, other just to point people back to the website, the applicant pack, and the email us anytime at CoSTAR, just to reiterate what Will said, and also from the real-time team. We're really here to help you apply, so please do not hesitate to ask us any questions, and we're very keen to make sure that you can apply. And not everyone is familiar with the application process, so we want to help you to translate your great R&D concepts into a really good application.
Perfect. Right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining, and thank you very much, everyone, for presenting. And I will stop the recording. Enjoy your day.
Thanks, everyone, for attending. Lovely to see you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.